So, everybody, welcome to number 2 of the Because I Can podcast series. They originally came up with a slogan, if you like, Because I Can, because we just decided that as an organisation, we were going to undertake a whole load of different challenges just to push ourselves and test ourselves and see where we could get to and probably get outside of our comfort zones. And, you know, as people that stand in front of other people delivering training all day, we think it's really important that you kind of still practice what you preach, learn new skills, get outside of your comfort zone, etc. And you might recall from the first one we did, first podcast, I mean, that Paul passed comment to say that, you know, idly sitting over a glass of wine with me and telling that you want to do something is potentially a dangerous game. Paul, I seem to remember you and I sitting down over a glass of wine, and I seem to remember you saying to me that actually, you know, wouldn't it be pretty awesome to summit the Matterhorn? For those of you, by the way, that have ever eaten a Toblerone, it is the mountain on the side of the Toblerone. So if nothing else, you've learned something new today. So Paul, talk me through the glass of wine says, yes, let's climb the Matterhorn to, I believe the guide saying, Paul, you need to let go of that mountain in order to be able to climb it.
Yes. So Tim's hiding his light under a bushel there a bit. Tim's got quite a lot of mountaineering experience. I haven't. You know, I enjoy walking. I enjoy going into the hills, going into the mountains, but I haven't got any technical skills at that. And so, really, it would have taken many, many years to get the skills to go and do something big and technical. But actually the Matterhorn is probably the hardest mountain I could think of to climb, where you don't have to be amazing at 200 knots and dangling off with ice axes and all this sort of stuff. So as an amateur, as a fit and motivated person, but still an amateur, it's just about within your reach to do it. So Tim and I had a chat. I was like, oh, I'd love to go and do that. Let's go and do that. And unfortunately, Tim said, yeah, that's a great idea, and then followed through and actually got some guides and got chatting with a few people about it. The Matterhorn is tough. It's 9 or 10 hours of going up and down this this triangle, this Toblerone, and so let me set the scene. So I am with Tim, who has a lot of experience, including climbing in the Himalayas, and myself, and we've got 2 guides with us, one with attached to Tim and one attached to me. So I am by a long way the beginner, the least experienced in the team. And we set off. You set off at about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, because it's safer to climb when it's still cold and frozen. And I'm surrounded by all these amazing climbers with all their kit on, and I have a huge amount of imposter syndrome going on, an enormous amount. I am standing there, almost shaking with fear. I've got the little gremlin sitting there on my shoulder, just whispering into my ear, going, "Paul, look around, look at who you're standing next to and with. You've got no chance. You don't deserve to be here. You haven't done the training. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to fail. You're going to let yourself down. You're going to embarrass yourself in front of your mate, in front of the guides, etc., etc." And it's incredibly intimidating to know you've got 9 or 10 hours of this. You're at the very bottom. You're at the very beginning, and already your heart rate's through the roof, and you're starting to flap a bit. And we'd spoken about this. We'd had a chat. Tim and I had been very clear that, if it was getting difficult, we would call it a day, and no harm, no foul. We'd come back. But I really didn't want to be the person to turn to Tim and go, before we even start, I don't want to go ahead and do this. I really don't want to do this. And so I just thought, well, maybe if I just start, maybe if I get up, and it's quite intimidating. There's a big thick rope that you have to climb up. It's almost the hardest bit of the mountain.
I think the first 20 feet is almost the worst bit of it, actually, Paul. I think
I know the first bit, and I was just like, how do I do this? And so I thought, well, maybe I just chop it up into bits, chunks. Maybe I just go, well, I'll just get to the top of here, and then I'll turn to Tim and say, can we go back, please? And then I got there and I thought, well, maybe if I just get round the corner and then we'll call it quits. And then maybe, and there's a few obvious bits along there, maybe if I just get to that ridge line, and maybe if I just get to there, and, because the weird thing about the Matterhorn is you can see the summit from the bottom. And you can just see it. And
you can see it from Zermatt, let alone the bottom.
Yeah, it's just so far away, and it's just impossible to reach. And so luckily, I just kept sitting there, just going, "Can I keep going for the next 10 minutes?" And I did.
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second. Do you remember dinner the night before? As I said, so Paul and I had spent we'd spent probably a week kind of acclimatizing, working together, and in fact, one of the things I would like to bring across is Paul and I, we've done a lot of stuff together. We've literally been to war together. We've done all sorts of stuff together, but we always have this thing about there's a flat structure. There is no ego. It is all about, if one of us is not feeling it, we say that out loud. We're never afraid to say that out loud, and that way you keep each other safe. So I thought we got ourselves into psychologically quite a good place, and we'd found this pretty amazing Italian restaurant at the bottom, not even in Zermatt, at the bottom before we got there. And I said to Paul, look, no harm. We'll have a glass of wine. We'll have something to eat. We'll all relax before we because it's like a 2-stage process when you go up. So you go from there up to kind of the first hut, and away you go. Anyway, we're sitting there, looking like climbers. So the imposter syndrome thing must have been doing something quite good. And this gentleman comes across to us, and he says, "Oh, hello, guys." He said, "Are you here to climb the Matterhorn?" And we said, "Oh, yeah, we are actually. Yeah,
of course.
Of course. bit nervous about it, but yes, we are." He goes, "Oh, well, can I share this story with you then?" And we're like, "Yeah, brilliant." Thinking that we were about to get a story of heroism and daring do, and in fact, he had come to place some flowers at the grave of his best friend's son who had perished falling off the Matterhorn. And this gentleman, all of his best intentions, spent 25 minutes telling us the story of this young man who hadn't survived climbing the Matterhorn. And if I could have done anything to stop this guy talking, because I could just see the colour draining out of Paul. But then luckily the mood was lightened, because he went back to his wife at the other table and said, "Oh, those two guys have climbed the Matterhorn." And then we overheard the ensuing row when his wife then said, "Please tell me you didn't just spend 20 minutes telling the two guys who are about to climb the mountain the story." And we're like, and he's like, "Yeah, I did. Yeah. Thanks very much." Anyway, so to interrupt you, but it was this was not helping Paul's peace of mind as we get to the site. And in fact, if I remember rightly, when we got to the Hornley hut,
yes,
the first thing we saw was somebody being airlifted off the mountain. So you were doing pretty well, Paul, to be honest.
Yeah, I can't believe that. We after this story at the bottom on the day before, we get to the Hornley hut, which is where you spend a few hours overnight before you then get up in ridiculously early and climb the mountain itself. You can see the whole mountain, and you can see the climbers from yesterday coming down. Someone's fallen, broken something, and they're having to get winched off the side of the mountain by the big red helicopter, while I'm there, having a coffee and having my dinner. This is not setting me up for success here.
Paul was like, "What are you looking at, Tim? What are you looking at?" I was like, "Nothing. Got nothing to see. I need to look out the window."
Good. No, that was that. So I'm very glad Tim made me do that. It's one of those things where if I'd been with most other people, we probably wouldn't have done. But because I'd said I liked the idea, it's very hard to then unlike the idea and get away and just go, no. And so, yeah, it was little steps. We got to Zermatt. Okay. We got a bit put off at the bottom. We got to the Hornley hut. Watch someone get winched off. It's hard to quit at that stage. We got to the start line. It's pitch black. Everyone's got their head torches on. You're climbing up a silly rope, just going, "I can't do this." And then it's a bit of a rush at the beginning. Loads of people pushing along. Well, not pushing, but moving quickly. And so it's very hard to just go, no, I'll stop now. And so, yeah, just little steps, and eventually somehow we end up at the top there. Tim, your guide, I seem to remember having a good laugh when your guide gave you some good advice on the summit ridge.
Yeah. So, guys, if you get a chance, I'm sure on our YouTube channel we've got the footage from it's quite a famous summit walk across the top of the ridgeline of the Matterhorn. But for those of you that haven't seen the YouTube, if you can imagine, you're roughly 4,500 meters in the air. It is pretty much a straight line down to Zermatt if you were to come off. And you've used crampons and ice axes to get up the last, I don't know what, 100 meters or something. And you're now walking along this ridgeline, which is probably a foot wide, give or take. And you have to pass other people, and you're kind of teetering along the edge. And in fact, we had to edit the video, because you may or may not hear me use rude language at one point, because the guide, Andy, who's actually a top bloke, Andy turns around and looks at me and says, "Tim, you really should watch your footing along here." And that was, that's some of the most useless advice I think I've ever been given.
I think I might, yeah. and then what I hadn't fully appreciated was it was 4 hours to the summit for us. It's 5 hours to get down. It's harder to get off the mountain than it is to get to the top.
I think that's because you may have been hugging the mountain quite a lot.
Yeah, that was a bit unfair. As on the way down, I had a little moment, a sort of, a semi-slip, and I grip on tightly. And I think the guide said, "Paul, you've got to climb it, not make love to it." Thanks for that. That's not helping my ego, my abilities here, anything. No.
But I think guys, the way, like, as with all of these things, the whole point of doing that was to prove that if you really put your mind to it, then you can. It is attainable. Paul and I worked out a program. We sat down. We understood the skills that we had to do to get that together. We found a guide who was up for training us and sharing us. And we kind of built those steps into it. And then by looking after each other, we found a way, if you like, to achieve it. And there's a bit of an expression in the military, which is the kind of still here beer, and somebody once asked me to sum up that, and I thought, well, it's a beer earned, isn't it? And that night we came back down off the mountain from a couple of days at the mountain, and we sat there quietly together and had a beer that had been earned that day. And I think there's no feeling quite like that, actually.
No, and it just ties into that whole "because I can" attitude. Why did we do it? Well, because we could. Why did we do it? Because it pushed ourselves out of our comfort zone. It was something that we could do, and it was something we could look back on and go, yeah, well, rather proud I did that. Not sure I'd do it again, Tim, but rather proud that I did do it. So yeah, thanks.
I think, guys, really just take away from this, right? Next time you're sat around a table on a Friday night, with friends, appreciate that's probably not at the moment. But actually, and everyone says, yeah, brilliant, let's go and do this. But unfortunately, the next morning, for all really good reasons, we sort of let life get in the way. I've got to pick the kids up, or I've got to go to work. All completely valid reasons as to why you can't do something. But actually, for me, you'll be amazed. Say yes more is something you'll hear. And actually, once you start to change your mindset a little bit, and you start to find ways to make something happen, when you start to find ways that you can do something, you'll be surprised actually what you can achieve. And I certainly don't have Paul's business background, but I know that he would sort of echo the same thought process from a business point of view, Paul, as much as a climbing point of view. Guys, we'll see you next time on the Because I Can podcast. Actually, listen to me. You can't see me at all. It's a podcast. We'll talk to you next time.